Welcome back and thanks for being here for another one of my true crime videos. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and buckle up because today's video is a whirlwind of mystery, crime, and creepy facts about a place in Florida known as Celebration. Located just 1 mile from Disney World, Celebration was imagineered by Walt Disney himself as the perfect American town, a real-life extension of the happiest place on Earth. And even though Celebration isn't technically its own town or city, this community definitely stands out as a fairy tale neighborhood straight out of a storybook. But looks can be deceiving, and as true crime viewers, we know that things aren't always as they seem. This cookie-cutter neighborhood, said to be built on childhood dreams, harbors some horrible secrets, terrible crimes, and even a cursed pond. It's been home to murderers and predators, and the creepy facade has led some people to compare the vibes of Celebration to movies like The Truman Show and Stepford Wives. Personally, I get Pleasantville vibes from it. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's got Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon. And it definitely gives off these 1950s, perfect little town vibes. Celebration also reminds me of the film Blue Velvet by David Lynch, another great movie if you haven't seen it. But these pastel-colored houses, white picket fences, and green gardens can't conceal some of the ugliest truths that live just down the street from the happiest place on Earth. In this video, I'm going to tell you guys all about Celebration and some of the creepiest things that have happened there, including true crime stories and some urban legends. But before I go any further, I just want to say that I mean no disrespect to the people who live in Celebration. I don't want to offend anybody, especially not victims and their families. I actually just wanted to make this video as kind of a relief from some of the cases that I've been covering lately. A lot of them have weighed really heavily on me, and actually today is my birthday, so I decided to treat myself by covering a topic that I'm just genuinely interested in. Ever since I first heard about Celebration, I found it strangely alluring, albeit creepy, so without any further delay, let's dive deep into today's creepy coverage of Celebration, Florida. Walt Disney dreamed up the town of Celebration way back in the 1950s, but the town is still around today with a population of around 11,000. Disney wanted to build a community that would fit into his growing brand. He wanted to create the American Dream Town, a time capsule that you could basically live in, one that preserved the peak of American suburbanism, even though plans to create Celebration didn't come to fruition until the 1980s after Walt Disney had died. He had always dreamed it up as a part of his parks. He really wanted that community extension. So we've all most likely heard of Epcot, and originally the town of Celebration was meant to be an extension of Epcot, which stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. Sounds pretty futuristic, and that's exactly what it was marketed to be. But as Epcot and the Disney World theme park grew in size and popularity, the Celebration idea, the Dreamland of Tomorrow, was put on the back burner. Within the company, some of the executives were wary about the idea of Celebration, and they felt like the proper, smart investment was in the parks. So for a while they held off on the idea in order to make sure that the parks could expand as the demand called for it. But by the 1980s, the Disney company had about 27,000 acres of unused property surrounding the Disney World theme parks. So they decided that about 4,900 of these acres could be used for Disney's Dream Town. 4,900 acres of property were dedicated to the town of Celebration, and a new department within the Disney company began making plans to establish a residential community. Now, as I previously said, Celebration isn't technically its own town or city. It's known as a census-designated place, and it's located within Osceola County, Florida. And the whole town was originally founded and operated by the Disney company. The Disney company announced plans for the community of Celebration in 1994, and by 1996, they were selling homes and moving people in. Celebration was so popular at its conception that if you wanted to buy a house there, you had to enter a lottery. It was basically like there was a waiting list for people to live in this Disney town. The community was marketed as a permanent escape to paradise, somewhere as friendly, colorful, and welcoming as Disney World itself. But if you ask me, it kind of feels like an attempt to escape reality and almost like progress in a way. I don't know, the whole idea of this dream town just doesn't sit right with me. It feels off, and I feel like there's something to be said for the creepiness of perfection. I also think there's an interesting psychology behind the type of person who wants to live in a place like Celebration. It kind of reminds me of the movie The Village. If you've seen it, it's literally this like bubble community, this village that's stuck in like the 1800s or early 1900s, and they're completely isolated, and the founders of this village created it because they wanted to escape society, and like their past traumas made them want to retreat. And I'm not saying that that's true for everyone in Celebration, but when you market a community like that, you're kind of going to attract people who are running from something, possibly even running from themselves. I know a lot of people love Disney, adults and kids alike, so I'm really not trying to hate on Disney at all, or Disney World. I think there's something to be said for wanting to live in a place like Celebration and actually making it happen, you know? I don't know, that's just my opinion. And honestly, to each their own, and certainly Celebration was extremely popular at its conception, so you do you. Everyone who moved to Celebration was expected to participate in the upkeep of aesthetics and the pleasantries of the community atmosphere. Residents had to adhere to strict guidelines when it came to their homes and yards. The houses in Celebration need to either be white, tan, yellow, pink, or blue. There are restrictions about what you can grow in your gardens. The town will actually fine you if your grass grows above a certain length. And all of the windows need to have white curtains facing outward in order to maintain the uniform look of the community. So obviously everything has to be like super duper in place, and they're really particular about this. There's another rule that every lawn needs to have some type of Mickey Mouse decoration visible from the street. So you kind of have to be a huge Disney fan to live there. And I feel like, you know, if you're gonna pay to live in Celebration, it's not a cheap town. So you're probably a pretty big Disney fan. Still, there are some regulations that are just annoying for residents, like you can't have more than 2 cars in your driveway at any time, and some of that I'm sure gets pretty annoying, but it's all to upkeep the aesthetics of the neighborhood. They won't even let franchises like Walmart or Starbucks set up shop. Everything is mom and pop in order to promote that quaint, old-fashioned vibe of Celebration. Basically, everything has to be just right. And if you live in Celebration, you have to comply with these regulations or you'll be fined and eventually evicted. Still, the citizens of Celebration certainly know how to celebrate Christmas. They're known for some of the best decorations and light displays in all of Florida, and people drive for miles to see Celebration during Christmas. They're known to bring in fake snow and to have light shows that are synchronized to different Christmas carols. So I'm sure it's definitely a festive event. And even in fall, Celebration is known to import like dying leaves to scatter throughout the streets to really enhance that fall, autumn feel. And obviously in Florida, there aren't seasons, so the leaves aren't falling. And it just goes to show how much Celebration really goes to the nth degree to bring seasons to Florida. There are even speakers in the palm trees that broadcast light, happy music throughout the entire community. And I mean, I guess that goes with the fantasy vibes of the town, but that would just drive me absolutely crazy. I am 100% going to visit Celebration at some point in my life because some of these details are just so bizarre that I feel like I have to experience it for myself. Despite the instant popularity of Celebration and the initial influx of homebuyers, it didn't take long for residents to realize that Disney didn't fully deliver on their promise for this suburban utopia. And I mean, how could they have? it's really no surprise. They definitely overpromised and underdelivered. And there was also a lot of issues with the roads and some of the other facilities that Disney had built in Celebration. On top of that, many people who just came through to visit Celebration noticed that the community was very obviously predominantly white. There was very little ethnic representation, and neighbors even described the community as somewhat cliquish and intolerant. Some of the original residents who ended up moving away from Celebration noted that they were instantly excommunicated by their former neighbors and friends as soon as they left Disney's Dreamtown. And this us versus them mentality definitely points to an in-group that's not very accepting of outsiders. People who live in Celebration sometimes call it the bubble because they really are kind of in their own isolated bubble away from the rest of the world. But former community members describe this bubble as being incredibly toxic and intimidating. As all of these imperfections came to light, some of the original residents were disillusioned to the utopian reputation of Celebration and they moved away. But these exits really just made room for more curious Disney fans to come and go through the town of Celebration. Fun fact, Disney actually sold Celebration in 2004. So since then, the Disney company has had no stake or real control over Celebration since then. But Celebration is still really popular amongst Disney fans. And in the 2000s, there were no shortage of homeowners, renters, and developers that were constantly bringing in new money into Celebration. These new demands sparked the establishment of a Celebration hospital and school. This school was a joke, and actually it was worse than a joke because it was dangerous too, and I'll go into more detail about that when we reach some of the crimes that occurred in Celebration. But the school was completely dysfunctional and disorganized. The Celebration school only employed a handful of teachers to oversee the education of some 80 students, and all of these students ranged in age and grade, so obviously students couldn't really get the attention they needed, and some people were learning material that was way too advanced for them, while others probably weren't being challenged enough. It was just disorganized, dysfunctional, and the curriculum never really seemed to be up to par. A lot of ex-students and parents also say that the teachers were really impatient and overcritical about the students' work when, they were just doing the best they could. Luckily, the school system in Celebration has since been upgraded, but it really seemed like in those early years, things were really disorganized and there just wasn't any oversight, which is pretty dangerous in a school environment. You're sending your kids away to go be with these adults all day, so you want to be pretty confident that those adults are safe and trustworthy, right? And no doubt as a result of this lack of oversight, there was a teacher who was hired at the Celebration school who should have never been trusted around kids. And this man's legacy would go on to tarnish the reputation of Disney's Dreamtown. Celebration had only experienced a handful of serious crimes since 1996. But in 2010, a murder-suicide investigation would uncover unspeakable horrors that could be traced directly back to the Celebration school. Celebration resident Matteo Patrick Giovanditto had been a school teacher for nearly 40 years, and he claimed it was his true calling. Former students recalled happy memories in his classroom that was always filled with toys and stuffed animals. He was known to plan the best field trips and to provide mentorship to struggling students, but he always seemed to favor the male students over the females, granting them extra attention that did not go unnoticed by some of his coworkers and the parents. And this extra attention that Giovanditto gave his students made a lot of the adults that knew him pretty uncomfortable and suspicious of him. I believe that Giovanditto was aware that people around him were suspicious, which is why he moved around so much in his adult life. Originally from Boston, he lived in Massachusetts, Arizona, and Florida. eventually settling in Celebration, where he secured a job as a school teacher in their only schoolhouse. Now, Matteo Giovanditto may have been able to move around from town to town and state to state, but he was never able to outrun himself. The truth is that Matteo Giovanditto was a child predator, and he should have never been allowed around children. Giovanditto allegedly groomed and SA'd multiple children throughout his career, including at least one child at the Celebration school. While only a few people have come forward about their experiences with this man, in cases like this, it's safe to say that there could be more victims out there who just don't feel comfortable coming forward. So we don't really know how many children this guy really hurt. Given his sick, treacherous intentions, it's no wonder that Giovanditto made his way to Celebration. Living in Celebration, he'd be within walking distance of Disney World, every child's dream vacation. And this is exactly what he wanted. He was hiding in plain sight behind the facade of the happiest place on earth. Giovanditto was a monster hiding in plain sight who was not only taking advantage of children, but also their parents who'd moved their families to Celebration to exist in small town innocence. We know that Giovanditto was inappropriate with at least one child from the Celebration school, and he was able to go on and hurt this child for more than 4 years. He had the complete trust of neighbors and parents. And predators like this are sneaky master manipulators, and they often maintain a spotless record specifically so that they can pass background checks and get positions in schools or to earn the trust of the parents. So we just have to remember you can't blame the victim in situations like this, and I think as parents it's an important lesson. It's an important lesson that you never truly know somebody, so it's better to be safe than sorry, especially when it comes to who you let around your kids. And some of the parents in Giovanditto's communities throughout the years would let him take their children on field trips, but also out of the country on vacations. And I'm just gonna say, I don't think that we should do that with our children. Maybe not let them have that much freedom with people who are practically strangers. You might think you know somebody, but you never truly know a person, and especially with children, we'd rather be safe than sorry. So and some of his victims describe the abuse as pure manipulation. He wouldn't force anybody or hold them down or restrain them, but he would basically coerce them and trick them into unspeakable situations. And as an adult, he knew exactly what he was doing, and these poor children are innocent, naive, and so they were completely taken advantage of. And this is the worst kind of monster, and of course he's hiding in this little utopia Disney town. It's sick. He hurt a lot of people, and some of his victims are still trying to heal to this day. So I don't really feel too bad about the fate this guy met. In 2010, Giovanditto was 58 years old and he was retired from teaching, but he still lived in Celebration and mentored a lot of the kids there. He would take them on trips to Disney World, and he would also hire them to do odd jobs around his house. It was around this time in 2010 that Giovanditto hired a 30-year-old transient who was just passing through Celebration to do some chores in his garage. This transient was David Israel Murillo, and after helping Giovanditto clean out his garage and wash his car, he accepted a beer from him. He later told police that this beer made him feel groggy and disoriented. He allegedly blacked out only to wake up with Giovanditto on top of him, attempting to SA him. Of course, this enraged Murillo, and he did his best to fight back even though he'd been drugged. Somehow Murillo managed to strangle Giovanditto until he became unconscious. And at this point, Murillo probably could have just left. He probably could have taken the money he earned and left with a legitimate self-defense case, but he decided to stay in Giovanditto's house and look around. And in one of Giovanditto's closets, Murillo found an axe. and he used this axe to hack Giovanditto to death. It would take a few days for the residents of Celebration to realize that Giovanditto was missing, and a welfare check led to the discovery of his body. Being a transient without his own transportation, it didn't take long for the police to apprehend David Israel Murillo. As soon as he was brought into custody, Murillo confessed, but the story doesn't end there. In the subsequent investigation, police were going door to door in Celebration to try to figure out any other information or to gain a bit of insight into Giovanditto's reputation. And as they approached one of Giovanditto's neighbors, they were met with gunfire. 52-year-old Celebration resident Craig Fushi initiated a 14-hour standoff with police that ended in his own suicide. This man ended up shooting himself in the head, and luckily no police were hurt. But this was really weird because they had no idea what prompted this. Craig Fushi wasn't a suspect or a person of interest in the Giovanditto case or any other open investigation. But a further investigation revealed that Craig Fushi may have been involved in his neighbor Giovanditto's despicable acts. So not only is one resident of Celebration probably a child predator, but there were probably two, and it ended in a gruesome murder-suicide that made national news. There's a lot of speculation into the extent of Giovanditto's crimes and how he was able to afford such a luxurious lifestyle, traveling out of the country and living in Celebration on a teacher's salary. If you're really interested in this case and want to know more about it, I'm going to provide a link to an article that goes really in depth into this Giovanditto case. So you can find that in the description, and it's definitely interesting. There's a lot of details that I didn't include in this short little summary. So if you're really interested in this case and want to know more about it, check out that article in the description. So obviously the town of Celebration isn't as picture perfect or idyllic as Walt Disney imagined it to be. Another strange feature about Celebration is a body of water known as the Death Pond. Technically, this pond is a couple miles south of Celebration, but Florida residents closely associate it to the Disney Dreamtown. This pond poses an extreme safety hazard. It's really deep and it's located in kind of a blind spot. It's lower than the ground, so you can kind of like look across the horizon and not see the pond. It's just a weird optical thing. And up until recently, there were no signs on the road that warned drivers or pedestrians that there was this pond like right past the road. So if you weren't paying attention or if you went off the road, you would go directly into this deep pond. And that's exactly what happened to 3 young men who were road tripping across Florida in 1998. They drove right off the road and into the pond where their car sunk to the bottom. None of them escaped and they all drowned. But for like 9 months, this was a complete mystery. Nobody knew what had happened to them, and it seemed like they just vanished right either outside of Celebration or within Celebration. So this mystery disappearance caused a lot of speculation to swirl around Celebration, and at this time it was only a few years old, so it was not the reputation that Disney wanted. Eventually the car was discovered and the mystery was solved, but even with the mystery solved, Celebration's reputation as creepy was really just solidified. This pond is host to a number of urban legends, including tales about baby eating alligators and a number of other terrifying incidents that generally can't be officially proven. Of course, in Florida, incidents with alligators do occur, but I think those stories tend to flock around Celebration because the town already has a creepy reputation. Celebration actually has a pretty low crime rate, but the creepy Dreamland facade makes horrendous crimes and accidents all the more shocking and memorable. Even in recent years, Celebration has a growing reputation for the macabre, with no shortage of true horror stories. In 2020, Celebration was host to a family annihilator. Anthony Todd killed his wife, 3 children, and their family dog in his Celebration home. Their causes of death were reported to be homicidal violence and poisoning. At the time of the murders, Anthony Todd was being investigated by the FBI for a Medicaid scheme that defrauded over $130,000 from various insurance companies. This man was deeply involved in illegal activity, and he was up to his eyeballs in debt. It's speculated that he killed his family so that they wouldn't find out about their financial situation, and he lived in the house with his family's dead bodies for at least a week after he murdered them. Residents of Celebration were riding their bikes and swimming in their pools while Anthony Todd was creeping around the decaying bodies of his wife, children, and their family dog. If that doesn't give you the chills, I don't know what does. It just goes to show that you don't know what is going on behind closed doors, and a creepy Disney-themed facade isn't gonna make the world any safer. The Disney company may have severed all ties with Celebration in 2004, but their name will be forever linked to this Disney-themed town. There's something bizarre about the streets of Celebration, and forgive me for saying that if you live there and you think it's a peaceful place. I'm definitely not saying that it's not, but you can't deny that the overall aesthetics and the theme might make it a little unsettling for people. In the same way that some of us get creeped out by dolls, Celebration gives off this cookie cutter vibe that's almost too good to be true. Ever since I first heard about Celebration, I've been fascinated with that little community, and I've really wanted to make a video about it for a while. I know it's a little different than the content I've been creating lately, and even though this is a small channel, I want to be consistent, but I hope you guys liked this change of pace. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Celebration. Do you think it's kind of cool and cute, or is it creepy? And if you've ever been there, please share your experience, because I definitely want to go at some point. But that is where I'm going to end this video. Thank you for being here for another one of my true crime videos. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications so that you'll be updated every time I post one of these deep dives. If you liked this video, share it with somebody or give it a thumbs up. But that is where I will leave you guys. That's all for now, and I'll see you in my next video.